Hi everyone, I'm Sanjana and I have Fes Askari with me today to talk about ABM. Hi Fes, thank you for joining me today.
Sanjana, nice to see you and happy to interview today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to talk to you today about ABM. I know you do a lot of webinars and podcasts about ABM, and you have this strategic ABM webinar series running. So really looking forward to this conversation. Just to give an introduction about Fes. So Fes is the Director of Sales at Strategic ABM, and he's a passionate B2B sales and marketing leader living in the UK with this beautiful family. So Fes, welcome again, and shall we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to dive in.
All right. So let's say I have dipped my toes in the account-based waters with some one-to-one campaigns, but now I'm ready to really get my feet wet, but just need a solid jumping off point, right? So how and where do I get started?
That's an interesting question, Sanjana. And I think, actually, I would probably take a step back quickly. You asked where would we jump in or get started, but you mentioned one-to-one there. Now, one-to-one for us is a very strategic version of account-based marketing. So one-to-one is almost jumping straight into the deep water. And for some teams, one-to-one absolutely makes sense. If you are, a certain type of organization with a certain level of maturity, or you have a specific set of accounts that you need to engage, then perhaps one-to-one may be the right approach for you. But from our perspective, we often recommend that teams think about the wider ABM framework. So we have what we call the blended ABM framework, and that evaluates one-to-many, one-to-few, and one-to-one. And really making sure you're clear on which type of ABM program is the right starting point is so important when launching your ABM strategy. And often jumping straight into one-to-one isn't always the right approach, because there's a couple of considerations in terms of risk versus reward with one-to-one marketing. With one-to-one, you're putting a lot of your eggs in one basket or two baskets. Also, you're putting a lot of resource from the sales and marketing team to focus on a specific account or a couple of accounts. So there's a lot of risk there. So, I would suggest that teams are really thoughtful around which ABM program types are the right fit. And, there are a couple of key questions that you need to ask around your commercial objectives, your ABM maturity, the kind of size and shape of your organization that will help you answer those questions around which ABM program type is the right strategy for me at this stage of my journey.
Okay, and what type of ABM program would you recommend for a startup? Let's say an early stage startup.
So early stage startups need to do a couple of things, perhaps even before they get into a formal ABM program, right?
Okay.
So with startup marketing, what you're really trying to achieve there is a level of product market fit and understanding what kind of audience is going to accelerate your adoption in the market, and where can you find that sweet spot for growth, really, right?
Exactly.
So, that's where perhaps some level of demand generation and inbound marketing may work nicely for you to test messaging and understand what works well. If you have a specific proposition in the market, like if you have an enterprise solution or a mid-market enterprise solution, that's where perhaps an ABM model may work well for you. If you think more generally about, go-to-market strategy, there's a couple of different go-to-market models that you could adopt as a business. You have product-led growth, you have inbound demand generation, and then you have more account-based marketing. Those different types of models. Again, often teams may benefit from running a blended strategy, different types of go-to-market models. But if you're a startup, you may not have the bandwidth to run all of these different models. So you need to be really clear about which type of model fits your product and solution area and audience. So I would suggest, ABM is really a marketing strategy for businesses that have more of an enterprise proposition. So you got to ask yourself, do I have an enterprise proposition? Do I have a complex buying journey? Do I need to influence another number of key people within a target account. If you tick some of those boxes, then yes, ABM could be a fit for your go-to-market strategy. And then as you move into the ABM motion, you start to define your ABM framework, and you start thinking about which type of ABM program is the right fit for my objectives. Now, thinking about most startups, they want to kind of build some coverage within a market, right? They want to kind of create some sort of category engagement across the market that they're targeting. So perhaps where we would normally recommend anybody starting on their ABM journey, those foundational layers of one-to-many ABM and one-to-few ABM. That's probably the right starting point for most teams. One-to-many ABM gives you a little bit more coverage into accounts, but with the focus on maybe your mid-market and enterprise segment. And then the one-to-few ABM program allows you to work closely with your sales team to engage specific accounts and create more of that personalized engagement program. Again, really early stage startups, they may not be ready for an ABM approach. They may be ready for an account-based sales approach, which is slightly different to an account-based marketing approach. Account-based sales, in my mind, is having a more personalized sales engagement process. Account-based marketing is actually thinking about your messaging, your value proposition, and your content strategy with that account insights lens over it. So teams need to understand the difference perhaps between account-based marketing, account-based sales. And then you also have the concept of account-based experience, which is from the buyer's perspective. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I totally agree with that. Now, let's say I have picked my ABM program for my company. And now how do I identify and prioritize target accounts?
Yeah, I think that's a key step in the development of an ABM strategy is account selection and really understanding, which accounts are important to you from a couple of different perspectives. So, understanding your product market fit and, really diving into perhaps where have you seen success with customers previously and how do you replicate that success in your ABM program. So what you're trying to do with ABM is look at a specific segment of your market, like mid-market or enterprise, and look at the deals that you may have had in your pipeline previously, and understanding that buyer journey, that enterprise buyer journey. What does that look like, and how can we replicate that success? Now, if you go deep enough with your analysis there, you might start to uncover some really interesting insights around your enterprise buyer journey. A certain set of accounts that you want to prioritize, particularly in the technology space. If you're a technology vendor and you're selling into other B2B organizations, you may be thinking about, well, my technology integrates really well with customers who have a certain technology stack, like they may have HubSpot, or they may have a certain technology like that, right? So that is one consideration around your ideal customer profile that you need to develop as you go through that account selection process. Often when we see accounts selected, it's just, oh, they have X number of employees, they have X number of value of revenue, and they are in X region, they're in the UK or they're in the US or whatever, and that's who we want to go after. But as you actually really clarify your insights and your ideal customer profile and your decision-making process in those accounts, you start to uncover how those accounts buy and which accounts you can have the fastest, almost accelerated sales cycle with, because there's less barriers there. So those are kind of the considerations you need when you're really developing an account-based target account selection process, prioritization and selection.
Yeah, that's really clear. And what does the ABM tech stack look like? Do we need to buy a lot of ABM platforms, related ABM platforms?
Yeah, well, technology and the sales and marketing technology stack, that can differ considerably depending on what kind of organization you are, what size and structure you have to your teams. If you're a smaller team, you mentioned startups earlier, with startups, you probably want to focus in on the technologies that are going to make the biggest impact in your programs. So less technology, maybe more focus on getting the foundations right in your program. There are certain technologies that we recommend that help you uncover data and insights around your target accounts. So, you know, absolutely, with technologies like Lead Feeder, for example, you can see which accounts are researching your website, and you can see which pages on your website, which solution areas that they may be researching there. And there's an opportunity to connect your programs together using data and insight. So, you know, as you break down the development of your ABM program into key stages, like defining your ideal customer profile. What does that ideal enterprise customer look like and why? And then the next stage that you mentioned there is account selection. How do we select accounts from our wider target addressable market, looking at our ideal customer profile? And then how do we prioritize accounts? Account prioritization can come through a number of different factors. It can come through a data-driven approach. So looking at data, it coming through your technology stack, through your campaign engagement, and through your sales team. You know, what kind of engagement are they seeing through social selling activities or meetings that they're booking? So, you know, that account scoring and prioritization can use data from a number of different touch points across your business. And every client has a different approach to their account selection and prioritization. And you know, at that level, you know, the kind of technology that you need is a good CRM and marketing platform. Normally, we're recommending something like HubSpot if you don't have something in place already. And then perhaps using something like Lead Feeder, at least at the base level, to capture data so that you can make decisions based on data.
Okay, and I'm curious about this one. So you said there are 3 different ABM programs. One is one-to-many, one-to-few, and one-to-one, right? So how many accounts do you recommend targeting in one-to-many campaigns?
At the one-to-many level, I mean, how many accounts can differ depending on the size of your target addressable market. But realistically, what you're looking for in an ABM program is to be more personalized and relevant to your target accounts. So essentially, less is more. But with the one-to-many program, you're trying to define a key audience within your wider target addressable market that you can be relevant to for a specific reason. Like you have a product or a solution that you want to ensure that the value proposition for that product is really clear into a specific set of accounts, because those accounts will get the most value out of your solution, and you'll have higher adoption rates and faster sales cycle. So in a one-to-many program, on average, you might be looking at roughly 1,000, you know, thousands or hundreds of accounts, not really tens of thousands, because then you're really starting to dilute your value proposition. So, you know, at the demand generation level, you have your generic value proposition that you're campaigning at the persona level. At the ABM level, in the one-to-many program, you've personalized your value proposition around a specific message. You know, it could be that this audience at the one-to-many level is only your enterprise market, and they have a specific set of challenges. So in the US, your solution could work within SMB, mid-market, and enterprise, but your ABM program is specifically designed to engage your enterprise audience. And maybe even within the enterprise audience, you only want to target customers who already have HubSpot. So that would be a segment you would target in a one-to-many program with a specific message and value proposition.
That's great. Okay. And what type of marketing channels perform well for ABM campaigns?
Again, you know, the channel tactics depend on which ABM program type that you're running. So at the one level, this is a really hyper-personalized engagement strategy. This account, mostly when we see one-to-one programs delivering the highest value, it's when it's an existing customer account. So you know this account because you've sold to it before. There's potentially a known land and expand opportunity in that account. You can increase your share of wallet in that account because you have some existing relationships, but you've identified there's other pockets of budget in that account that you grow your revenue into. So you can identify those decision-making units, and you can essentially treat that account like a market of one. And in that scenario, that's probably going to be led more by the sales and the account teams. So at the one-to-one level, it's really channel tactics that are much more kind of relationship based. So you need really content that's really personalized to that account. You might have more commercially focused content because that account is already a customer. They already at some level understand your solution proposition, but you're looking to increase adoption within that. So really that channel, when you talked about channel tactics, it's really about sales enablement type activities. You might run some broader kind of campaign, and it depends on the audience size. It depends on how niche the audience is at the one-to-one level. At the one-to-few level, you're probably taking the level of personalization down a few notches, and you're trying campaigns that speak to a cluster of accounts. You've selected 15 of your priority accounts for this, and you're going to create an engagement strategy into a specific decision-making unit across these 15 accounts. So you might be targeting the office for the CF, and you might be targeting 15 accounts with a similar value proposition. But you may personalize that value proposition slightly, 10 or 15% personalization into each account. The channel tactics that are thinking again about, sales enablement, peer-to-peer strategies, but you also might be thinking about creating more of a digital experience. So, how do you leverage social selling activities and build your sales team network within those target accounts? But really thinking about your digital content strategy and awareness content into those accounts. At the one-to-many level, it's probably a broader strategy that you're creating, how to build proposition awareness, and really targeting a segment of accounts like mid-market or enterprise, and compelling awareness stage content that helps build your brand and build your proposition awareness. Particularly, you mentioned startups again, just to think about their startups have. Often startups maybe, creating or solving a problem that buyers aren't, perhaps a new category, So there's some awareness in that space. You need to bridge the gap from what the buyer is doing today versus where you think that they should be if they had adopted your technology solution. So there's a lot of awareness content that needs to be created to bridge that knowledge gap, and perhaps using some of your subject matter experts in your to articulate the value proposition is a really nice way to bridge that knowledge gap. So maybe a shift from just focusing on ebook downloads to really using compelling thought leadership content to bridge that knowledge gap. Does that give you a few different of channel tactics?
Yeah, that does give me, and it's really interesting. This is the first time I'm hearing, such a broad, explanation for the marketing channels and the ABM programs, all of the types that you mentioned. This is the first time that I'm hearing, because I've not done ABM extensively. I've only focused on product marketing and content marketing, but it's really great to learn about ABM. This is really interesting so far.
Yeah, I would say good ABM starts with a solid content marketing foundation, right? So doing the basics of good marketing, your persona work, that is really important to developing an ABM strategy, because ABM is about being really relevant and personalized to the accounts that you're targeting. So you really need to understand the content that's going to move the needle within these accounts. And with ABM, it's not just about product-led messaging and content. It needs to be thinking about more of that executive engagement strategy, the business case type content, because you have to influence the senior decision makers in an account to create more of a, a value, not just at the product level, but also at the business level. How are you going to create business impact within the accounts aging?
Got it. Yeah, that's really great to know. And let's talk about some of the ABM pitfalls, right? So if teams are getting started with ABM, where do they majorly fail, and what are the pitfalls in ABM?
Yeah, it's a good question. Where do teams fall down with ABM? I would say account selection is a critical factor in ABM. It shouldn't be that just the sales teams come to you with a list of aspirational accounts. There needs due diligence done around the account selection work and making sure all of the key stakeholders internally are aligned on why these accounts are the best accounts for the ABM program. So you need to look at it from a product perspective. You don't want to target a list of accounts if your product strategy is going to change in 3 months, right? The marketing team ensure that they bring in a level of insight from the marketing campaign and any that they have and research on the market. That will inform your account selection process. Sales need to bring that in. They might have a view on the existing relationships or where these accounts have churned on the past, upcoming renewal opportunities or competitor insights and things like that. And then the commercial team need to have a view because they need to agree that these opportunities are going to give the business the best growth and revenue impact. So, there needs to be a couple of different stakeholders involved in that account selection process. So don't skip that step. Get the account selection process right. The next stage is really understanding your value proposition. And often what we see is teams trying to take a generic value proposition to market in an ABM program. And they haven't really done their decision-making unit profiling. They haven't really done the insights work. They haven't really personalized the value proposition to the cluster of accounts that they're going after. Because actually, the value proposition is the message that creates the engagement within the account. It shifts the perception of your business when the buyer engages with their understanding of what value means to them as a business when they're buying your product or service. So, really understanding what is a value proposition, and then how do you personalize that value proposition using insights for the target accounts that you're campaigning into. So, make sure that you take your time to develop your value proposition in a meaningful way, and then make sure that everybody that's involved in the ABM program, marketing and sales, understand how we're going to use that value proposition when we're engaging the accounts from the awareness stage through to the opportunity and close one and beyond. And then the other aspect of ABM, I would say, is developing the experience. So when we're talking about executive engagement strategies, and it's not just about creating ebooks and infographics. It's about creating really strong experiences that engage your executive buyers in a almost immersive experience that helps communicate your value proposition. Remember that ABM is really targeted towards that enterprise buyer journey. And so those executives, they are busy, they're identifying risk, by adopting a new technology. So there's a lot of considerations, and you need to help build trust and confidence, and then explain the vision to them. What's the vision? What's this journey of adopting a new technology in their business? How's that going to impact their business in 3, 6, 18 months time? And getting that story right is really important to the ABM experience.
Yeah, got it. And I was about to ask who owns ABM and which other teams are part of ABM, but I understand that it's a cross-functional collaboration between different teams. But what I'm trying to understand is who really owns the ABM? Is it the CEO, or is it the marketing team or the sales team?
Yeah, I absolutely Your point of CEO is right in terms of it has to come top down in the organization. The CEO needs to be bought in on the vision for ABM. But in terms of who owns it, I would say that some of the best teams I've seen have developed maybe what you would call an ABM steering committee internally. So you have key stakeholders from marketing, and you have some key stakeholders perhaps from sales working together to find the roadmap for the ABM program. You need to have sales bought in to the ABM program because to educate certain members of the sales teams from SDR to AE to solution, about how they're going to execute the ABM playbook from a sales perspective. But really, ABM in its purest form is going to be a marketing program, because marketing is going to own the key aspects of the value proposition development, the content and messaging strategy, the story, the account experience. Once that's been designed, working with the sales and other stakeholders, then we can start to deploy it via the sales team and peer-to-peer engagement like that. So, having one key stakeholder, i.e. the marketing organization, own the ABM program, ensures that your narrative is across the program, from the awareness through to the sales enablement and beyond. Narrative is telling the same story through that customer journey.
Oh, and who identifies the target accounts? Is it the sales team or the marketing team?
Well, I think that definitely needs to be cross-functional activity. Normally when we're doing it with a client, we run a series of workshops, and it starts perhaps by the sales team providing us with a list, the marketing team providing us with their views on the ideal decision-making unit. Then we look at the data, what data about these accounts, and then we start to go through a process to really validate that account selection process. So get the process right, and then the accounts will come out the other end, right? So, it's not just about selecting the account, it's the process. So you have this always on account selection framework. So if you have an understanding from this about what their objectives are, and then the commercial teams about what the business objectives are, and then the marketing team can stitch that together and come up with a meaningful account selection framework. And that can be owned by different teams in the business. Maybe sales owns that, but as long as marketing has visibility on how that process has been built, and the output from that process, it's really important for marketing, because they then can understand, okay, so this is the process that we're going to run based on this criteria. Because if we have one of our key account selection criteria is that the priority accounts in our one to few program, they have to have a certain existing technology. They have to have something like Salesforce in the business, right? Then our messaging is all going to be around a level of Salesforce is going to be in our value proposition, our messaging, and our content strategy, right? So we need to understand the logic behind that account selection process, because it informs the value proposition, the messaging, the account experience, all of these things that come after.
Right. And also from time to time, I think customer success will also be involved in this process, because, for example, they can interview existing customers that we see good success with, and then they can inform insights about those customers to the marketing and sales teams, and so that they can come up with a clone of these customers, right? So that is also a good approach. Does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ABM isn't just funnel, lead to opportunity, close one. It goes way beyond that as well. I mean, some of the biggest ABM programs in the world are focusing on existing customers, retention and expansion of existing customer accounts. And that's really working closely with customer success, account managers, that end of the customer engagement cycle. So really, when you're thinking about existing customers, there's a completely different data set there. There's, what products are they already using, and what usage, what adoption, and then using that insight in your ABM messaging and campaigns. Because, you might see you might have your intent data view of your existing customers, And you might see that a certain segment of your customers are suddenly trending around your competitors, because one of your competitors is running a really active campaign into your existing customer base. So what you might do is create an ABM program to mitigate those defections from, to the competitor. So you might use intent data, existing customer data to monitor your target accounts and reduce defections. And you may run an ABM program around that type of strategy.
Got it. That's interesting. And like, what has changed with ABM with the pandemic?
What has changed with ABM in the pandemic?
Yeah,
a lot. A lot has changed. Everything, in the B2B marketing and sales world has changed with the pandemic. A lot of companies are struggling to understand their product market fit, or they're having to reimagine their customer and understand who their product is fit today. Maybe new markets have opened up, or maybe they've lost a big part to their existing customer base, right? And so really understanding your customer with fresh eyes is really important. And then thinking about what's the best mechanism for your teams to go to market in today's world. Everybody is having to be a little digital first, right? We're starting to see events and face-to-face come back at some level. It may not ever go back to the level it was before. It may just be more targeted. My sister works in the events industry, so I have first-hand experiences how this has impacted businesses and people, right? And I want events to come back, but the dynamic of events may change. It may be more hybrid events, and there's positives and negatives to that. Events can become smaller and more personalized to the people that you're engaging, right? So that's one benefit of events becoming smaller. But also that virtual event experience could become really dynamic. So there's been a lot of technology developed during the pandemic that makes the event experience much more compelling and experiential. So, a lot of thinking has been developed only in the last, 6 or 12 months around how the teams go to market in a modern way. There's a lot of shift and change happening. A lot of budget is being deployed in different ways now. A lot of digital first activities. The biggest thing that you need to consider, though, is that there is a lot of noise in the digital space.
Exactly.
So this is where we're seeing even more adoption of account-based marketing, because you need to be more personalized and relevant to your accounts. And again, it's about creating more of a buyer experience, because even if you have a very kind of traditional sales model where it's driven around the salesperson, what you want to do is create more of an experience, because enterprise sales is always going to be about trust and relationships and credibility. So how do you create that in a digital experience? And that's a lot of what we're thinking about today at the agency. And a lot of it comes down to just showing buyers that you understand them, that you recognize their challenges, and that you can, almost walk in their shoes at a level. So, that's around creating a really compelling content experience.
Great. And how strategic ABM helps companies with their ABM strategies?
Yeah, we work with companies at a number of different levels. We provide consultancy services to teams that are thinking about ABM but can execute a program in-house. But we also support teams that need more of a hands-on approach, so we can do strategy, planning, and execution. Key areas that we're helping teams are actually around alignment, so aligning sales and marketing teams and helping them speak the same language, understanding the KPIs and metrics for ABM, and then understanding, how to report on ABM across the business. The other areas that we're thinking about is, how to help teams develop that really clear account selection process, and then defining their ABM journey, depending on what type of organization you are, what your customer profile is, what kind of complexity there is in your organization between sales and marketing. So really just helping you build the right ABM framework for your organization. And honestly, there's so many different types of ABM programs that you could run: net new, existing customer, depending on if you're a startup, depending on if you're enterprise. But everybody should be thinking about the same ABM framework, one to many, one to few, one to one, but then creating the right journey for your business.
Got it. I think I personally learned a lot about ABM in this conversation. Now, my last question for you is, how do we measure the impact of an ABM campaign?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, most ABM programs are defined by impact on revenue, right? So ABM is a really strategic marketing initiative, and account-based marketing is designed to help sellers sell better, help create bigger deals, help to create bigger pipeline opportunity, and to help accelerate the sales cycle at some level. And you can do that at different stages in the buyer journey, from the awareness stage, creating stronger proposition awareness, through to sales enablement, and creating a better customer experience through the sales process. So I think some of the kind of key considerations of ABM are the 3 R's of ABM: reputation, relationships, and revenue. To get to revenue, you have to build really strong relationships by providing the sales teams great collateral and messaging and value propositions and offers. And then at the reputation stage, it's about enhancing your credibility within your list of target accounts and perhaps the category that you're marketing in. So really understanding how to create strong engagement, buyer engagement. And those are the 3 key metrics that we think about: relationships, revenue, and reputation, and simplifying your reporting structure at the executive level to kind of focus in on some of those key metrics there. And then, at the operational level, you'll have all your campaign data, your marketing campaigns and sales operations metrics. And the leadership team need to have clarity around where we're making the biggest impact with the ABM program.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. All right. So I think we've reached the end of the episode. Before I wrap it up, let's do a quick rapid fire. I just have 2-3 questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. So who do you follow the most on LinkedIn?
Oh, that's a good question. There's tons of great people out there that I follow. Really different people, actually. I think, a couple of people that I'm really interested in hearing insights from are, I'm trying to think of some names now. You put me on the spot, but Nick Bennett is somebody great to follow. He talks about field marketing and ABM. I like hearing content from Alex Ollie over at ReachDesk on the sales side of things. Who else do I follow? There's a couple of people. Mark Ritson, is a key marketing thought leader. So if you haven't followed Mark Ritson as yet, he talks about B2B and B2C marketing, but marketing as a more strategic initiative. So there's a couple of key people that I think about you may want to pick up on if you haven't heard of them already. That's and obviously Declan, our agency CMO, he runs our Let's Talk ABM series. So I'm always watching those interviews and consuming that content. That's some great content there.
Yeah, they're really great. I think anyone who wants to learn ABM, I think that's the place they should go. I'll also give the link to the series in the description so people can check out later. And what's your favorite book or podcast?
I'll have to say my favorite, well, there's 2 great podcasts that I follow. One is the podcast from the team at Gong, and they talk about a lot of different topics related to sales and marketing, but sales acceleration strategy. And really on the marketing side, again, let's talk ABM series, because that's where we get insights from peers in the industry about ABM. In terms of books, there's a couple of great books. There's the SaaS Sales Blueprint from Jacco van der Koop. I really recently did the course from Jacco, Winning by Design. That was really interesting. Other books that I'm reading, there's books from Bev Burgess at from ITSMA, and she talks a lot about ABM strategy and how to develop your ABM program, particularly thinking about executive engagement strategies.
Okay, that's great. I've not heard of that. I'll definitely check that out. And my last question is, what's your one piece of advice you want to give it away to our listeners?
Just generally or specifically to ABM?
It could be anything.
I would say, really build bridges within your organization. Work closely to understand the challenges of the counterparts in the teams that you're working with in sales and customer success. Understand what they're doing in their job roles, understand their KPIs, understand their challenges with prospects and customers, so that you can really help them do their job better. And that will make you more successful in your role, because you'll be able to deliver the right kind of value back into the organization.
Yeah, that's really important as well for everyone to do. I've started doing that recently, just when I joined Leadfeeder, and it's going great. And I'm able to align with different teams, and I'm able to help them with, content collaterals and feature launches and all of that, right? So it's a great cross-functional collaboration to have with different teams and to understand their KPIs, so we can align with, we can align our KPIs with theirs. So if you do that, it's going to be a great success for the company.
Absolutely, yeah. I think particularly to not everybody, but a lot of teams are still working in distributed and remote kind of environments. Just hey, grab lunch. Can we, have a Zoom meeting and just have a chat? I'd love to learn more about your role and what you're doing in the business and what the challenges are and how you're engaging with customers, because I'd like to see maybe how I could help you, or what value I could add from a sales or marketing perspective, whatever your seat is in the business.
Exactly, that's what I've been doing, and I'm seeing a great success, and this is a great advice to the listeners. All right, Fes, so I've exhausted all the rapid fire questions which I had for you today. So this was absolute fun. I loved your energy and the way you explained each and every answer. It was really great. It was a thoughtful conversation. So I'll give your LinkedIn link in the description so people can connect with you later if they want to talk about ABM. So Perfect. Yeah, it was nice talking to you, Fes. Talk to you again.
Thanks, Sanjana. I really enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, absolutely. If your audience want to connect with me on LinkedIn, perhaps I can answer some of their questions on there.
Great. All right, Fes. See you again. Bye-bye.